I just recently came out of the theater screening Weapons, the new horror film by Cregger. I think this guy is one of, if not the most exciting filmmaker in the horror landscape at the moment. His previous and first effort in the genre was 2022's Barbarian. This was such an explosive hit, critically and commercially, considering its $4 million budget. I fondly remember Barbarian as being this really well-directed basement horror film with a gnarly structure to it. The film constantly twisted horror expectations on its head, and its gnarly structure left the story constantly feeling unpredictable throughout. It was a genuinely amazing debut that stands tall with other horror first-timers like Get Out, The Witch, and Hereditary. Cregger cemented his name among the greats in modern horror, and proved that he's one to look out for. So now we're at his sophomore effort, and to provide a bit of background, Cregger submitted the script for Weapons back in 2023 and went into a bidding war between New Line Cinema and Universal, with Jordan Peele's own production company Monkey Paw Productions under Universal wanting to acquire it. Jordan Peele wanted the script so bad that he fired his management team after they fumbled the offer. There was also a mini ARG for the film, with early screenshots releasing alongside a mysterious website named MaybrickMissing.com. This website revealed that Weapons is in fact taking place in the same world as Barbarian, and it was riddled with mysterious clues and screenshots from the movie. I love that this took inspiration from films such as Longlegs and The Blair Witch, with those films having some of the coolest marketing campaigns in cinema history. With early screenings of Weapons also receiving perfect scores from critics, this was easily one of my most anticipated movies of the year. With Cregger having full creative freedom and a crazy string of teasers and trailers, we got a movie that is shaping to be a modern classic. Weapons is about an entire third grade class of 17 children suddenly waking up and running out of their homes one night at 2:17 in the morning in a small town. That synopsis alone has to get you excited to watch this film. This sentence was riddled all over the marketing and posters, and the film even starts with a child narrating this very statement. Only the twist is that the unidentified narrator is telling the story from 2 years in the future, but I'll get more into that later. I think the significance of this statement is flipped on its head when you watch the final product. The film not only emphasizes the importance of these missing children, but also shows huge themes of trauma, exploitation, and general dangers that children are unfortunately dealing with at this point in time. There is also a really important specification in the narration itself, where the narrator says, "and they never came back." Obviously, the kids do physically come back and they go back to their parents and everything, but it's emphasized that these children are not the kids that these parents once knew. Once again, I'll get into that later. This film has a Magnolia-esque structure of it being divided into these sort of chapters of different characters' perspectives at different points in time. At first, I didn't really know if this would be something that I'm a fan of, as with all the chapters being told in a non-linear fashion, it makes this movie's pacing seem a lot slower. However, I did end up coming around to it, as by the very end of it all, the storylines felt like they were necessary to push this narrative forward. Do I think some of them are a bit too long and some of them aren't long enough? Yes, but it's this type of structuring that makes this film's world feel small and makes the story feel tighter. The retroactive explanation in Alex's chapter was probably the most haunting part of the movie, as Carrie Christopher does a great job playing this kid who is slowly becoming enslaved to this witch. If this was a lesser movie, the sequence would have felt boring and too explanatory, but the way it's presented and the way the storytelling already put all the jigsaw pieces together, apart from this last bit, made it really engaging in my opinion. Not to mention, all of these sections wouldn't be able to stand on their own if it weren't for the amazing performances in this film. Josh Brolin delivers an incredible performance as this investigative and concerned dad, and Julia Garner is also great as this really flawed person that the whole town seems to be against. The junkie and the cop are the characters we get the most comedy out of in the movie, and a lot of the time it lands in my opinion. I like the fact that there's comedy sprinkled all throughout this movie, between some of the really disturbing bits. It gives the whole thing an unpredictable feel, and I certainly caught that sentiment. The more I watched this, and once the film really started to get going, I honestly had no clue as to what was going to happen next. Obviously, this film will get and has been compared a lot to 2024's Longlegs, with the cryptic marketing and the mysterious and unsettling feeling of the trailers and posters, even down to the final reveal and the possession of the characters. Where this film sets itself apart though is in its storytelling and themes, as well as the tones, where Longlegs was an almost comedically cynical and bleak crime thriller, Weapons is more of a pure horror movie. I think the actual horror sequences in this work really well, with one notably actually getting me pretty good. It's a scene where Josh Brolin's character Archer finds the 17 kids in the basement and is looking for his kid Matthew. I honestly thought it was gonna cut away again, but it just stuck on him with his flashlight searching the basement until the light shines on Gladys, crouched over and smiling, jumping at the camera. I don't know why, but this actually got a good scare out of me, and it's probably the only time I've been genuinely scared by a horror film in a while. It was the type of jump scare that felt earned in my opinion, unlike most jump scares in big horror films nowadays. But anyways, Cregger conjured up some pretty creepy imagery in this, a standout being Benedict Wong's character when he goes after Justine. What he does with his face and eyes is genuinely terrifying imagery. I love shots like the one in the basement I mentioned earlier, and the shot looking up where Alex's mom is breaking down the door is chilling. Also when Justine is sleeping in her car outside of the Lily's house, and we see Alex's mom walking like a puppet on a string. This might be the creepiest moment of the film, honestly, as Cregger's merciless single shot take with the sparingly used and quiet score makes for an amazingly directed horror scene. This is even further enhanced by the fact that at this point in the film, we're at the peak of our questions. The mystery and ambiguity of the plot is what makes this moment so scary, and while we're on the topic of mystery, I think it's time to talk about this film's symbolism and messages, because there are a lot. There's clear implications of school shootings and the trauma that comes with them, with the film dealing with a mass disappearance of children, and the strange dream sequence where Archer sees an AR-15 floating above his house. This one bold act of symbolism is exactly what ties all of this together in my eyes. The numbers 217 are riddled all throughout this movie and its marketing. Why? Well, there are multiple meanings to these numbers that the film allows the viewer to pick apart. For one, and probably the most significant one, is the real-life parallel with the attempted assault weapons ban of 2022. 217 was the exact number of votes the House Representatives had towards passing it, which made it go through, but unfortunately failed to pass as a law through the Senate. This bill would have been historic to the progression of stopping mass shootings in the United States, and its numerical connotation to the film is no coincidence, as there were also 17 victims in the 2018 Parkland school shooting, which took place in February of that year. The presence of this specific assault rifle in this scene furthermore makes this no coincidence. The title of this film being Weapons points to this even further. Cregger wants to tell a story not just about how a witch was trying to weaponize a class of kids and a town. He's drawing real life parallels to how we use weapons and weaponize different things, and how we've essentially glorified these weapons by not taking action to do better, such as not letting the bill pass. The ending of this film is deeply abrupt as we see Archer's kid blankly stare at the camera as the film's narrator 2 years in the future says that some of the kids that came back have just started talking again. This is where the final part of the tagline of this movie comes into play, and they never came back, is the haunting conclusion that reigns true. Sure, the kids survived and came back physically, but the ramifications of the witch Gladys' spell have essentially vegetabilized these children, and made them a shell of the lively growing humans they once were. Like I said earlier, this is an insanely bleak ending, and one that left me overall satisfied with the narrative, but left me with an unsettling feeling, as it made me reflect on what I had just watched, and what Cregger truly wanted to say and do with this. What I think he was getting at was various stories of people who failed to protect society's most important gift. Children taken by a malicious force, and one child having to deal with a scenario that many kids in the real world have to deal with, having their roles reversed where they have to take care of their parents because of unfortunate situations. There's a looming somber core to this film, and to truly analyze why, we have to go back to when Cregger was first coming up with the idea for this. This film came out of Cregger's mind in one of his most tragic moments. While he was working on Barbarian, Zach Cregger's long-life friend and co-creator of the comedy series Whitest Kids You Know, Trevor Moore, tragically passed away on August 7th, 2021 due to an accident involving intoxication. This incident caused Cregger to start writing as a form of processing his grief. What followed up was him building this deeply personal story that he felt was essentially his masterpiece so far. This really great interview between Cregger and the Rolling Stone delves into these topics. As stated, what it felt like, he eventually realized, was channeling a palpable sense of loss that allowed him to process what he was going through in the most outrageous ways possible. But the moment Cregger says this, he once again stops himself. Look, like the rest of the world, I don't want to watch another horror movie about grief. That whole horror as a metaphor for grief is so fucking played out. I shouldn't even be talking about this, but I can't help myself. I don't care if anybody gets any of that when they watch it. I just want them to have fun. If the story rips, none of that matters. But I wanted to do something honest, he continues. And I found that as I kept writing, and the more I identified with all the people I was writing about, the more this became something like an honest diary of my inner shit. It's funny, I was talking to Ari Esther about this, and I was like, I don't know about the personal stuff. And he was like, the personal stuff is what makes this work. Don't be ashamed of it. Hearing him say that, it's part of the DNA of Weapons. The town is dealing with a loss, and so was I. It was the biggest direct hit I'd ever taken. Like I said earlier, 217 has a bunch of meanings, another one of them being the ratio of children missing to the people from the classroom still there. 17 children went missing, and Alex and Justine were the only ones left in the class. 217 is also a nod to Stephen King's The Shining, and the iconic room number 217 where tragic and supernatural events occur. The Shining references also persist in the explosive final act, where Alex's parents break open doors in the same way that Jack does in The Shining. Another big one is how 217 could be referencing the Bible. Obviously, there are many Bible verses this could be pointing to, but I think Matthew 2:17 could be the most connective one, where the prophet Jeremiah is saying that his prophecy of the infants being slaughtered in Bethlehem is fulfilled. I thought this was the most interesting one as it connects to Rachel, representing the parental grief of losing children, and the verses in the book of Matthew, which is the name of Archer's kid in the film, and Archer is at one point shown to be immensely grieving for his child and apologizing for not being there for him and telling him that he loves him. Archer also seems to be the most grief-stricken parent in the film, which further proves this connection between 217 timestamp and the Bible verse. Zach Cregger has stated that the number is not random, but he also hasn't stated any sort of deeper significance, which is really cool in my opinion because it gives leeway for discussions like this about the deeper meaning of it all, instead of the director coming out and outright saying the meaning of the numbers. Back to my more critical points, I feel like this film could have been slightly trimmed, more specifically the side character that I wasn't crazy about, being Austin Abrams' character, James. This drug-addicted character gets a bit too much screen time, and is kind of a distraction between some of the more interesting things going on. I understand that the structure of this film was intended to bring everyone together at the end of the climax, but I just felt like they could have cut out like the first third of James' chapter just to make it feel tighter. The craziest part about all this is that I don't even think this is the wildest that Cregger can get. With this only being his second theatrical release in horror, I'm willing to bet he's got plenty more left in the tank. If all goes well, I believe he'll be standing strong among titans in the genre such as Jordan Peele, Ari Aster, and Robert Eggers. Weapons is a visually creepy, riddled with symbolism, somber story conjured up by Zach Cregger's grief-stricken mind. I'm not gonna lie, this might be my favorite film of the year so far. I don't know how anything will top this. This is such an emotional film that is clearly a personal project come to life. Weapons will age beautifully, with the events leading up to its release and the movie itself making it one of the most memorable pieces of horror fiction in recent times. I want to go rewatch this movie right now and go back into this sad but gripping world. 9 out of 10. If you've made it this far into the video, I can't thank you enough. If you liked this video and want to see more, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel. It's completely free and would really help out my channel. Also, make sure to check out my second channel, Open Zipper, which is a funny moments gaming channel that I have with my friends, if you're into that kind of content. Link for that will be in the description. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you in whatever I do next. Goodbye.